Alright, going to try and give you a behind-the-scenes look at the way a page of a graphic novel or a comic book is done, or at least the way that I do it. So I have Steve's script. Steve wrote the Geeks and Greeks script, and he did a really brilliant job on it. It's a tremendously funny script. It's got great characters, great situations. I think it'll make a great movie if it ever comes around to that. One of the things Steve does is he does it like a screenplay. So he has everything in the script, meaning the descriptors as to what the characters should be doing, and then the individual narration and dialogue. And it's completely written. A lot of times in comics, what we do, and when I'm working with myself and I'm writing my own stories, I don't do a full script. I work from a plot. Having a full script can be a little bit challenging, but it can also make things easier in the best case scenario, and this is definitely the best case scenario. Steve broke down each page into a page so that we have page 91 here that you're looking on your screen, and it breaks down not only what happens on the page but how many panels he wants, and then he gives a little diagram here of what size panels he thinks should be used. Now, for the most part, I'm skeptical when a writer tries to do that because it's an artist's job and it's an artist's ability to create the page layouts. We choose different panel sizes specifically to convey different emotions, different pacing, different effects. So it's really in our wheelhouse to make those choices. And a writer sometimes doesn't get it. I often see writers do a lot of same size panels over and over again. Not in this case. Steve did a great job. I would say that I used his suggested layouts probably 95% of the time. There are a few times I deviated from it, and it was only to benefit the particular story. There's also, I do take some certain liberties, but I'm staying very, very close to what he's written. So we take the script here as we have it, and we take the layout, and we create a new page. So now this can be done either digitally or it can be done traditionally, and I do both. Basically, I'm going to do a thumbnail first. So a thumbnail is the rough layout of the page. So once I read through the script, I take it, I go page by page, read the whole thing, then I read it a second time and I make some notes. On the third time I do thumbnails like this. So all these match up both in his layout here and what he has written here. These are the pictures that he's describing in the script. I find it very helpful to do it really loosely, really rough. These are basically stick figures. I know they're laughably bad, but it's okay. It's only me that has to know what's going on here, and I like to reserve the real energy of the page into the inking stage. So at this point, I keep things really rough, I keep things really loose. Now, one of the most important parts of the process is the model sheet. That's what this is here. So you see, model sheets are essentially the way you cast your story. So each major character gets his own model sheet. There'll be notes on the model sheets to help me remember what specifically makes the character work. This is for Dexter. Dexter was one of the hardest characters to do because I couldn't get my head around a way to make him look nerdish and yet not cliche nerd. Now I realized tape on the glasses, which Steve called for in the character description, seemed cliched, and at first I didn't think it was going to work. But then visiting MIT a few times recently, I've noticed they actually do have a large number of people walking around with tape on their glasses. So, in fact, one guy asked, he said it wasn't that he couldn't afford glasses, or he didn't recognize that tape was a kind of a indicator of being a nerd. A, he liked the look of it, and B, he didn't want to pay for new glasses. So I can totally understand that. So Dexter was the last one I did. Initially, I gave him a haircut that looked like Ringo Starr from the Beatles. And with these glasses and his facial structure, it looked a little too much like Woody Allen to me. So I ended up going with this, which I call Bedhead. And it's got a bit of style to it, but it looks like a guy that doesn't really think about his hair too much. And this is what I went with. And it's going to work out well, this kind of comb-over effect, because there's a scene where Dexter gets pulled out of the water, and I thought that would make for an interesting look with this particular hairstyle. All right, so back to the thumbnails. So after I loosely lay in the characters on the page, you can see this is Jim with his hands raised because he's reacting to the troll that has surprised him and Natalie in his room. Panel 3, Dexter bursts in wearing a lizard mask. That's this panel here. We have Jim and Natalie reacting to Dexter with expressions as to, you know, what the heck is going on here. In the story, the character, the bridge troll, is a kind of an oddball character that lives under the MIT bridge. He gets placed in Jim's room as a prank, and the bridge troll all along has been battling invisible space reptiles, and it's Dexter's unfortunate choice of Halloween costume that he decided to dress up as the Gorn, and comes bursting into the room to surprise both Natalie and Jim and the bridge troll. So from the thumbnail stage, I go to the pencil stage, and you can see pencils are not all that much more detailed than the thumbnails. Again, I try to keep all the detail in the inking stage because inking takes a lot of the energy of the page, and if I'm just tracing crazy detailed pencils, I find I lose a lot in the translation, so I like to keep them loose even at this stage. From there, I add in the panels, and you can see that is Steve's layout, just blown up. The panels, again, as I said, they do convey information, so wide panels mean a certain thing, narrow panels mean faster action, and even in this pencil stage there may still be some changes. From there, I drop in the lettering. So I actually copy and paste Steve's dialogue right out of his script, and that speeds things up for me. I'm also cheating a little bit here. When I do paste in the type, I do have to rearrange it so it falls into the pattern that fits the word balloons correctly, but I don't want to have you sit and watch that. From there, I put in the balloons, and the balloons are important because the balloons are equal in import to the pictures, and a lot of new cartoonists seem to forget that. They get so caught up in drawing great pictures, there's no room for the word balloons. Word balloons and the pictures in comics and graphic novels share equal billing. So you want to make sure that as you lay out your pages that you're giving ample space to the word balloons. And there's little tricks you can use too. Now, in my word balloons, one of the things Steve was worried about, he thought I was giving it too much space, covering up too much artwork. I do like the balloons to breathe, and if you keep space around those words, it just makes it easier to read. A little trick when a character is whispering is you put a large balloon and you put small text. So in this particular panel, when Jim says, "Oh no," that's how we represent a whisper. Now you can see in the pencils that I have Dexter wearing some kind of a football jersey, and I have the bridge troll in the last panel coming at Dexter. I made some changes as we got further in. I wasn't quite sure Dexter would wear a sports jersey. And in the last panel, if you read Steve's script, he calls for Dexter's POV, which means point of view, indicated by including Dexter's eyeglass frames in the panel. The bridge troll is charging straight at him, club raised high, and he's screaming space reptile. Now, that's a great shot, but it's a little bit on the experimental side. There's also a problem. If I try to draw the eyeglass frames, so we know we're seeing Dexter's field of view, the eyeglasses not only have to be drawn, but so does the mask, because Dexter's wearing his glasses under his mask. And it's a Gorn mask from Star Trek. And if we want to get technical, in the real episode of Star Trek where Captain Kirk fights the Gorn, one of the greatest episodes ever, because this is one of the most ridiculous costumes in the history of probably television. I don't know how William Shatner kept a straight face through this one. The teeth are actually, they don't come out of gums, they come out of the actual lips of the costume, so it's just, you know, really a papier-mâché type of dinosaur. The actor sees through these slits here that are between the nostrils and the eyes. It's clear in the show that's where he's seeing from. But as a reader, if Dexter comes in wearing a mask, we're going to assume he either sees through these eyes or he sees through these. and I'd have to show not only the eyeglasses, but I'd have to show the outline of the mask, and that's just going to be a really difficult shot, and I think it's going to be confusing to the reader. So I opted to go with just a close-up of the bridge troll charging at Dexter, and I wasn't quite sure about that. So you'll see as I drop in the inks, oh, from here, pencils are printed out onto sheets of Bristol, and I actually ink them. And it's easier to do by hand than it is to do on the computer. And then I scan them back in, and I drop them back under the letters. So you can see in that last panel there, I opted, rather than go with the close-up of the bridge troll charging with his club, and you can see him, bridge troll club, because we have a close-up here, I didn't feel we needed another close-up here, and I really wanted to emphasize the club, because in the following page, that club is going to wedge itself into the wall of Jim, Dexter, and Sean's room. Now, little details, little Easter eggs that I like to put in. Every page, for the most part, has something. For example, the bridge troll. His wrist gauntlets are actually mail-away leather bracelets that you could get in the back of comic books in the 1970s. Probably 2 people on the planet are going to know that. On the wall or the door to Jim, Dexter, and Sean's room, they have their name, as most dorms do, but the font used is actually one I created, and it's based on the handwriting of the cartoonist Moebius, who was Jean Giraud, a very famous French cartoonist whose work is legendary in the comic industry. He's one of my favorite artists of all time, and I actually love his handwriting. Had I done this font before we started the project, I probably would have used it for this project. I also put some Star Trek bumper stickers on the door of the room because that's what these college kids do. They decorate. I also gave Dexter a pair of Gorn hands, so not only did he get the mask, he got the hands. And there's a reason for that, and you'll see why in a second. Continuing the Easter egg thought, I put him in a Star Trek t-shirt. And I thought that made sense because if he's going to be dressed as the Gorn, he would try to dig in his closet and find something that is appropriate, and he puts on a Star Trek shirt. I'm going to, when I give the pages to Veronica to color, my wife is an amazing artist herself, and she is going to handle the coloring in the book. I'll give her notes and I'll indicate that this should be a red Star Trek shirt. Now, those of you that watch Star Trek will know, the original series, that the red shirts were almost always destined to be sacrificed in a given episode. They would beam down on the planet, it'd be Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and then 2 red shirts you'd never seen before. You knew the 2 red shirts weren't making it back. So I opted for the last shot of just the hand. I wanted to see the club. That was important because as we get into the next page, I'll show you a little bit here, I added a panel because Steve's original script calls for this to happen, that Jim pulls Dexter out of the way and then yanks Dexter's mask off. So what I did was I combined it so that Jim pulls Dexter out of the way and pulls his mask off in the same panel, so I'm able to have this shot, which is Dexter, who will be wearing a different shirt. In the pencils here, he's still wearing that football jersey. The poster in the background likely will not be a Patriots poster. I'm not really sure what it will be, probably Star Trek related. And that's the reason I added the gloves, because I get the kind of clueless stance of Dexter, and we're also reiterating to the reader that this is Dexter under the mask and under the costume, so that the hands get to stay when the mask comes off. And I also like this kind of pose of Dexter in this panel. He's totally clueless as to why this guy is charging at him with a club. So little changes like that I make just to really help the storytelling, really add to the storytelling. It's been a great project so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing this thing finished, and it's going to be stunning when it's colored. And that's it. So that's the process from script to inks to get the finished artwork. And I hope that was some help.